basically not feeling like they know when you're going to flip again. Hello, welcome to my video today. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. I'm just getting rid of all the stuff all over my screen, but welcome to my video, the impact of triggers on your children. Now, this is something that is very important to talk about, right? People talk about triggers, people talk about all sorts of other things, but the impact of the triggers on your children, on our children, not just yours, mine as well, all right, is something worth knowing. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that today. I'm going to talk about some triggers. I'm going to talk about the impact that they've had on my kids and the impact that your own triggers from your childhood and from what goes on with you, this sort of impact they can have on our children. Okay, so, but if you don't know, I'm Miranda Hodge. I run the Cherish Mum Space Coaching. I'm a life coach for parents and a teacher. I'm now a belief clearing practitioner and working on my NLP certificate. Got all this stuff going on, but I am basically a life coach for parents at the Cherish Mum Space Coaching. Okay, so triggers. What are triggers, first of all? Triggers are things, events, small events, that cause a big emotional reaction or a big explosive reaction in us. Okay, so different sorts of triggers. What have I got? One of my triggers is having too many people or too many questions thrown at me at once. If I've got too much going on at once and I'm expected to think at the same time, that is then extremely hard for me to manage. And that has always been one of the triggers that I've been most aware of since I've had children, most aware of and most, able to work on, I suppose, and put some strategies in place around that. Okay, so that's one of my triggers. For example, you might like to think about a trigger that you've got and pop it below in the comments. You do not have to do that, of course. If it's something you'd rather not share, of course not. But if you've got a trigger that you'd like to work on, then pop it below in the comments, or maybe you have been working on it. The first thing to know is that the first part of the trigger is often a child or an event that involves children. If you're a parent, most of your events involve children, right? Okay, most of those moments when we start to lose our minds are the moments when we have been doing stuff with our children, or they do stuff that is incredibly annoying to us. Okay, now just a quick side note, triggers are not necessarily those moments when you've asked someone 10 times to do something and you get a bit annoyed about it. That's not the sort of stuff I mean. I'm talking about a small event that makes you go, I can't even stand when you do that. That is the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. Okay, so, and quite often triggers have got lots and lots of layers to them. Okay, so something that might make me emotionally react could be different for you, but the reason that people emotionally react to that seemingly tiny event is because they've had layers and layers and layers of their own, what do you call it, like backing it up. They've basically had layers and layers and layers underneath that moment. All right, so when something happens that triggers me, for instance, I've got lots of experiences that back up the fact that I'm being triggered in that moment. Lots of things that have caused me basically trauma or mini trauma that's led up to that moment. That means when this happens, I'm straight back at the start. I'm straight back there living all those moments through these eyes of this moment. Basically, that's how it works. Okay, so this is the sort of stuff that we're talking about. The first thing to do, so I've got a masterclass, by the way, I've got a masterclass down there. The first thing that is on my 5 steps to dealing with a trigger as a parent, okay, which is what we're going through in the masterclass. The first step is to notice the behavior of the child. Now, if the child's caused your trigger, if it's not a child, great, notice whatever was happening in that situation, okay, because we can all have triggers about other things, okay, it could be to do with our relationship with our partner, could be to do with, I have no idea, anything, our interaction with our parents, our interaction with, mums at school or, wherever it is, okay, any of those things can be triggers. Okay, so if you've got something, think about that thing. Now, in this case, I'm talking about the things that our kids do that really trigger us. Okay, so you do not need to blame them. This is the first thing to remember. First of all, notice the behavior of the child. So what's actually causing you to get triggered? That's the first thing. What's causing you to get triggered? Is it because they are throwing something at the wall? The other day I had 20 people asking me questions and fighting at the same time. Yes, just because I'm a life coach for parents does not mean my kids don't have arguments. But my youngest went out the door and he actually slammed the door, much to my surprise, because he wasn't even in the argument, and he slammed his hand in the door. Now, I just was like, ah, you know, I had one of those moments where I was like, really should be dealing with this calmly, mostly deal with these situations calmly. But I was already so overwhelmed with everyone being on my case and asking me questions and when are we going to have the next food thing and why can't we do this, that I reacted in a way that I really didn't need to in that situation. Okay, now that you might say that's fine, that's normal, whatever, but I well overreacted in that situation. I was really not proud of myself afterwards. I had to literally apologize to my children. So, big reaction, not needed. Like the scale of the reaction was way too big. So basically you see that through all these different layers like we talked about. So what is the result for the child? What does the child feel like in these situations? Okay, we all know we have them. Okay, what is the reaction of the child? Or not the reaction, what do they take on board? I'm not talking about whether they, you know, flip you off or whether they, you know, throw a funny face or whether they go and go to their bedroom or whatever happens. What are they thinking and what are they taking on board? Now, there's a few different things. Okay, there's lots of different things actually, but I've got 4 here. Some of the different, that's what I've written them down clearly. Some of the different things that a child can take on are, apart from my mum's going to flip if I do that, walking on eggshells around your parents, going, I don't know when they're going to flip like that again. And that was the moment that I had with my kids. And I'm like, oh, I hate the fact that I've just had that moment because I don't want to be like that as a parent. All right, so that's a huge one. Okay, walking on eggshells. So basically not feeling like they know when you're going to flip again. And that is not a fun experience, not something that you want to have with your kids. It does not build rapport and it doesn't build the ability to be all, you know, sharing whatever they want to share and what do you call it? Sort of really abundant communication. It doesn't bring that abundant communication. All right, so that's something, walking on eggshells. I do not want my kids to be doing that. The second thing that kids can do, the things that kids can take on, is feeling responsible. Now, this is something that I see parents do sometimes, is actually blame their children for their own emotional moment. This is so not on, guys. We can't do that. You can't blame your kid for the fact that you're emotional. You can't say, look what you've made me do. You've made me so upset. I mean, that may be the case, okay? Go and have your upset moment. That's okay sometimes to let them see that on the very odd occasion. But we can't say, when you do that, that makes me unhappy. When you do that, that does this. That shouldn't be a regular part of your conversation with your children, okay? And it shouldn't be a regular part of mine with my kids, okay? Putting blame on them for a massive reaction you've had is not okay. All right, so if you're getting triggered by something, again, there's all these events underneath this. It's not just this one event. It's not the child dropping the milk. Okay, it's actually all the other events about when you got told off when you were a kid, about dropping the milk, about how you had to always do da-da-da-da-da, about how your sister used to throw milk at you and then you had to clean it up. All that stuff is actually what's leading up to that big trigger moment. Okay, so we can't blame our kids for all the events that have happened before this moment. It's not how it works. We can't do that, because then they're going to take on that responsibility. They're going to take that on as their own thing. Yeah? So they can take on a real sense of responsibility. I'm responsible for my parents' happiness. I'm responsible for other people's happiness. What does that turn into, or can that turn into? I'm responsible for my partner's happiness. And you can see how that can be an unhealthy situation. I'm responsible for my peers' happiness in high school. All that stuff is all tied in together. If they think they're responsible for your happiness, they're going to look through that same belief pattern at the outside world and everybody else. Okay, so we cannot blame them for the things that go wrong for us. It's our own responsibility. Okay, yes, they might have been part of it, but we can't blame them for those things. Okay, it's not, kids shouldn't feel responsible for adults' reactions. That's not how it goes. The next one is, so another reason why the impact on your kids of a trigger is, I am a good girl, or a good boy, or I am a this. I have to live up to this expectation. Okay, the impact on our kids can be, if I'm good, mum is happy. If I'm sad, if I'm bad, mum's not happy. Okay, of course there's a general thing around that. Sometimes that happens, of course. Okay, I'm not going to be happy if my kids draw all over the walls, obviously, but there has to be an element of, I love you anyway. The unconditional love bit, as a teacher, it's called unconditional positive regard. Okay, it means that you're a person and you're great anyway. It doesn't matter what you do. This is behavior. Behavior is external to you. If you haven't watched my recent video of that on YouTube, you need to go watch it right now, okay? Because you are not your behavior, but your behavior is external to you, and that is why I am a good girl. That's a belief statement. That's an identity statement. I am, okay? I actually do good things. I look after other people. I like being a nice person. But making your well, this is one of the impacts anyway of our triggers on our kids. When we explode, they can feel like, oh, being a good girl is what I have to do. I have to do this in order to deal with my mum's emotions, and that sort of ties in as well with the previous one. All right, last one, which is a huge one. Okay, the last impact that I've got here, please don't think this is an exhaustive list. The last impact that I've got here is increased anxiety, increased stress, and increased coping behaviours. Okay, so when you are, or when we are triggered, there can be a real increase, especially if it happens regularly, there can be a real increase in that anxiety in kids. Okay, there can be a real increase in stress in our kids. So stress and anxiety basically go together because they're pretty much the same thing, almost. Okay, they create very similar responses in the body. Okay, anxiety and stress, it can really, really increase as a result coping behaviours. So if you think about if you are constantly getting angry at them about, let me think of a good example. If you're getting angry about them for spilling the milk, put it that way, they might just decide that I'm not even going to have milk. In fact, I don't even want to do this, or I'm going to need you to do every single thing for me because then I know I'm not going to get it wrong. Okay, and you guys might be going, wow, I've got someone who does that. Okay, we all do that to certain extents, but if you are constantly blowing up about the fact your child spills milk, then you will quite possibly have a child who goes, you know what, I'm not even doing that anymore. I can't do that properly, therefore I'm not doing it. And that might hit some of us right between the eyes, because if we think about that, lots of us have felt we're not doing things properly, we're not doing things the ways our parents or our carers or people want us to do, therefore we're not even going to bother. So this is the sort of stuff that can happen if we have consistent triggered moments, big emotional reactions about small things around our children. Okay, and last but not least that I really need to add here, this is not a guilt trip. Okay, please don't feel guilted. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilted into anything. Okay, we all are going through these journeys, but if you don't go through the journey, then you don't go through the journey. Okay, so dealing with those big triggers is going to be amazing for you, it's going to be amazing for your family, and it's going to be amazing, most of all, for your kids as they go forward. Okay, many of us can think about times when our parents had big triggered moments and we went, wow, and we've taken some of that stuff on, right? And sometimes that's now our trigger moment, because we are people that go from generation to generation. If you want to break it at this generation, let's have a chat. My masterclass is going to be on the 27th of September. It's 8 till 9 p.m. at night. It's because all of us people need to be able to, you know, work in the day as well as work at night in my case. So if you want to find out more about that, it's in the link below. Grab a space. There's anyway, whatever. It's going to be on Zoom. All those different things you can find out in the link below. Otherwise, do you have a trigger? Drop it below if you've got one, if you want to share it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about this stuff, because this stuff is impacting our kids more than lots of other things in the world. All right? Because they need to know they've got a safe space in us as parents, and if we're struggling to provide that in some way or in some area or moment, that's the stuff we want to work on so that we can be normal, happy, sometimes grumpy people, not exploding at small things. All right, there you go. I'm Miranda from the Cherish Mum Space Coaching. Love to chat to you. Hope you have a great day, and bye.